Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to engage in a colloquy of sorts with my fellow colleague in House leadership, Representative of the freshman class, Representative Hill, and of course, to our wonderful co-class president, Representative Stevens. Representative Hill, what do you think about the freshman class?
You know, Mr. Neguse, I'm pretty excited to be here today because we get to brag a little. And I get a little tired about bragging about myself. I think that's something you do a lot as a member of Congress. And today we get to brag about our friends. So.
Well, I couldn't agree more, Representative Hill. Representative Stevens, what do you think about the freshman class?
Well, I am delighted to be among the freshman class, and I'm so proud of all of our accomplishments, particularly that we have 18 freshmen chairing subcommittees from all of the various great committees: Science, Space, and Technology, Veterans Affairs, and Small Business.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I want to associate myself with the remarks of Representative Stevens and Representative Hill. We've got an incredible freshman class in this 116th Congress. Not only is it the youngest and most diverse in history, but we got straight to work. We hit the ground running. And at the end of the day, this freshman class is making a lot of progress. And so I'd like to give the American people a sense of what the freshman class has been up to. Over the last 2 recesses, the freshman class has held over 100 town halls and over 400 events. That's a lot of events, Representative Hill.
Oh, that is a lot of events. And if you'll recall, a lot of the colleagues that many of us replaced, the former colleagues that many of us replaced, were criticized for not having town halls. But in fact, during the February recess alone, freshman members made up 51% of the members of Congress holding town halls, even though we make up just 18% of Congress.
Well, that's right. You know, Congressman Andy Kim from the great state of New Jersey, he has held more town halls in the last 3 months than his predecessor did over the last 4 years. And he has responded to over 5,000 letters from constituents. Quite a feat.
5,000 letters is a lot of letters. Congressman Dean Phillips actually started holding town halls before he was even sworn in.
Well, let me tell you about my friend Congressman Antonio Delgado, who has held 6 town halls over the first in-district work period.
And you know what? At her first town hall in Virginia Beach, Congresswoman Elaine Luria, who I'm proud to sit on Armed Services with, brought the beach's voter registrar and police chief, the head of its affordable housing effort, and one of its state delegates with her, and heard from more than 250 people who were attending.
Well, clearly this freshman class is making town halls the exception. The rule and not the exception. But the freshman class is also taking great care to talk about the issues that really matter to their constituents.
That's absolutely right. Congressman Anthony Brindisi's Working for Rural New York plan focuses on solving problems rural communities face in his district.
Well, let me tell you about my friend Congresswoman Angie Craig from the great state of Minnesota, who held a flood briefing to start discussions around different agencies working together in the case of major flooding.
Well, let me tell you about my friend Congressman Josh Harder from the great state of California, who is fighting for broadband in rural areas through the Save Our Internet Act.
Well, I don't want to brag, but I will. Congressman Jared Golden from the great state of Maine is advocating to lower the cost of prescription drugs for his constituents.
And Congresswoman Johanna Hayes, who was Teacher of the Year before, is now fighting to keep guns out of our classrooms.
You know, this freshman class truly is legislating with aggressive momentum.
Oh, we are indeed. 18 freshmen are leading House subcommittees, as my colleague, Ms. Stevens, mentioned, including Congresswoman Kendra Horn, Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill, Congressman T.J. Cox, Congressman Mike Levin, Congressman Harley Ruda, Congresswoman Susie Lee, Congresswoman Xochitl Torres-Small, and Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher. That is a lot of people, and what's so exciting about that is that there has never been a freshman class with this many people with the gavel.
18 freshmen, quite an incredible feat. But I will also say that freshman members of Congress have had much success legislating. Congressman Max Rose from the great state of New York has had 3 amendments pass this House, including an amendment to expand child care services for veterans seeking additional treatment.
And Congressman Andy Levin, who we just heard from, has introduced 6 pieces of original legislation. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Well, Representative Hill, I know that you know my great friend and colleague, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, who was able to include an amendment as part of H.R. 1 that would prevent foreign interference in the U.S. election.
Well, you know, we really want that foreign interference to not happen in any future election, so I'm glad to hear that. And just this week, Congresswoman Kim Schreier introduced bipartisan, bicameral legislation to help prevent child abuse.
Well, Congresswoman Chrissy Houlihan created a new bipartisan caucus to represent the interests of veterans.
And Congresswoman Abby Finkenauer was the first freshman to have legislation pass the House, a bill to bring federal investment to small businesses in rural America.
Well, I do know that members of this House would be well familiar with Congressman Chris Pappas, who has introduced bipartisan legislation to increase protections for first responders on the front lines of our nation's opioid epidemic.
And my other friend, Congresswoman Katie Porter, fellow member of the Katie Caucus, has introduced bipartisan legislation to make child care more affordable.
You know, all of these accomplishments that Representative Hill and I have outlined that this freshman class has accomplished, I think demonstrate that the freshman class is continuing to deliver for the people. Nearly 100 days into our transformative majority, we have passed major legislation across issue areas.
A truly sweeping Democratic reform package.
The first gun violence prevention legislation passed in nearly a decade.
The Paycheck Fairness Act and reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act.
And so, as we conclude and as we head into the next 100 days, I think it's important to stress that we're going to continue to work to lower the cost of health care,
end corruption in Washington,
raise workers' wages,
invest in our nation's infrastructure and public education system,
and of course address the existential threat of climate change.
And above all, we are going to stand up for the people again with the full force of this freshman class, and I'm so excited to do it with you, Mr. Neguse, and with all of my fellow freshman colleagues.
As at my Representative Hill, and with that, we yield back.
Thank you so much.